Timothy Cargan notes how the essay film suggests an appropriation of certain avant-garde and documentary practices in a way different from the early historical practices of both. One filmmaker whose work embraces this intermingling of documentary and avant-garde tendencies is Agnes Varda. Focusing on two of her later works, 2000's The Gleaners and I and 2017's Faces Places, this video essay will note how Varda uses the essay film to give visibility to people, places and things that have often been neglected by dominant narratives, and, in doing so, shows that she is both a feminist and a socially conscious filmmaker. The Gleaners and I sees Varda interview a variety of gleaners across France, from those who salvage the leftovers from rural harvests to those who scour the dumping grounds of Paris. While Faces Places, which he directed with the artist and photographer JR, sees the pair travel around rural France, creating large murals of some of the people they meet. It is useful to look at these two films because, just as the gleaners depicted by Varda follow after the harvest, collecting abandoned and neglected food, Varda herself follows in the wake of dominant narrative and representation, collecting images and interviews of different faces and places that have been neglected by mainstream cinema. As she says herself,
L'autre glaneuse, celle du titre de ce documentaire, c'est moi.
She utilises what Emma Jackson terms an ethnographic eye, which captures an attention to detail towards the complexity of the world and of people, as she foregrounds forgotten areas.
Agnès, t'es en Normandie, dans une des plus vieilles régions de France, et tu veux aller sur les maisons les plus moches du coin.
And forgotten people.
Personne ne peut comprendre ce qu'on a vécu.
This ethnographic eye, however, is a non-exploitative one, which respects and empowers its subjects, rather than degrades them. Kate Ince notes that Varda's work has been questioned, doubted, and found to be more feminine than feminist, but, as her discussion with the wives of harbour workers in Faces Places shows, Varda's lens empowers women.
Des dockers, et on parle pas tellement de leurs femmes. Et je me suis dit, cette fois-ci, c'est elles qui auront la parole.
Laura Mulvey, in her seminal essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, highlights Hollywood's proclivity for depicting women as passive objects of the male gaze. Varda challenges this, however, asking her audience to look at these women not as erotic spectacle, but as empowered, independent women, thus reaffirming her feminist sensibility. Not only does Varda give visibility to these people and places, by establishing a dialogue with them, she subverts our expectations. She shows that these women are not merely passive, domesticated wives, but truck drivers capable of standing up for themselves in a male-dominated industry. She shows that these gleaners are not merely impoverished scavengers, but intelligent people with jobs and qualifications. And, perhaps most pertinently, she shows that even the poorest in society are happy to share what little items they have with those whom they consider to be less fortunate than themselves.
Bon, ne vous inquiétez pas. On trouve toujours quelqu'un qui offrir.
This undermines assumptions made in the dominant narrative, as she uses form and composition to depict homeless teenagers and supermarket owners as equals, refusing to condescend her subjects, but instead trying to level the playing field. This ensures that there is a democratization of representation in her work, highlighting the intersectionality of her films, which position her as both a feminist and socially conscious filmmaker. Barbara Hammer declares that radical content deserves radical form, and in representing these frequently ignored individuals, Varda chooses to avoid using a conventional formal aesthetic. Instead, she employs an experimental, highly self-reflexive approach which does not attempt to conceal the filmmaking process. In doing so, she invites her audience to uncover various aspects about her. The blur of a photo captures her fading vision, establishing her fixation with mortality as she contemplates the end of her life. Filming her own hand, we understand that this is a self-portrait, highlighting Varda's interest in playing with form and her concern about her ever-aging body. Through formal playfulness, we discover that, like the gleaners she interviews, she hates the thought of wasting a useful find.
Ce qui nous vaut la danse d'un bouchon d'objectif.
Inserting herself into the films as co-subject, Varda cannot claim to be an objective observer, but she can and does incite discussion around issues of social responsibility, industrial waste, aging, female agency, and class, all while making space for cinematic experimentation. Even as she worries about the failing of her own vision, Varda still manages to turn her eye to people, places and things where others would fail to look.
En fait, tu vois flou et t'es contente.
Et toi, tu vois tout foncé, et tu es content. Disons, ça dépend comment on voit les choses.